All right, guys, we are back with episode 28 of the Guest List podcast. I have here today one of my good friends. We go back quite some time to when I was in college, and we used to run around a little bit. He is a professional poker player and a veteran of the poker community in Las Vegas. And I know a lot of things have been happening around the poker world. So this is the man that I wanted to talk to. So everyone welcome Darren Rabinowitz.
What's up, buddy?
Dude, how you doing, man? First, as I said before, love the background. For those who are just listening, he has the picture of the dogs that sit around the table playing poker. So I know you made that special accommodation for this.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny. It's crazy to say that you met when you were in college. It feels so like yesterday, but I guess it's a long time in your life.
Yeah, right. I remember when you had first moved into the Pie House once you graduated from ASU, just playing poker in a fraternity house, and I was still like 20 or 21 at the time. And to see both of us grow since that day, it's astronomical.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy for sure.
Cool. So you want to give everyone a little bit of a backstory of who Darren Rabinowitz is?
Sure. I grew up in Seattle. I normal upbringing. Grew up, hung out with my friends, played sports, watched ESPN. In 2003, ESPN started airing World Series of Poker, really, all the time. Everyone was watching it, and all of my friends started playing. The basketball team was playing. Everybody was it was the thing to do. We all, and I think it's pretty similar for a lot of people. That's, kind of how it starts. And a few people start to kind of distinguish themselves in those groups. I was not one of them. I was very bad, losing all the time. But my two best friends were two of the better players. And just by hanging around them and talking to them and we spent a lot of time playing together. We started playing online, and we were 16, 17 years old, racing home from high school, literally racing each other because my buddy had 3 computers in his basement, but only 2 chairs. So if you were the third person to his house of the 3 of us, you had to sit on one of those crates, and we were gambling for hundreds of dollars. We didn't buy a new chair. We sat on the crate. So we raced every day, and sometimes it was my buddy's house. He had to sit on the floor. And they were winning and I was losing, and we were sharing our money, and I kept losing. They kept winning. And so eventually, we graduated high school. One of my buddies went off to college in Montana. I went off to college at Arizona State, and my other friend, he stayed home, and he just played poker. That was his thing, professional poker player at 18 years old. And that's just how it was in 2006. You could drop out and play, and the games were good, and there were a ton of people playing poker. It was a huge thing. And yeah, he was killing it. And I was just at school doing my thing at school, joined API, got pretty into the fraternity, into the social scene. Then I'd come home winter break. For 30 days, I pretty much wouldn't be at my house. I'd be at my buddy's place just playing poker. But that was the only time I would play poker throughout the year. It was just winter break, spring break, and summer. Summer, I'd go home, spend the whole, go back to school, be in school. And then turned 21, and there was a casino down the street from ASU, Talking Stick, which is a pretty big casino in Arizona. It's a big casino, nice casino. Started going there, playing a lot, doing pretty well. Playing online a bit, doing well. Just kind of I'd lost so much over the years and learned through my mistakes, and I was kind of starting to just pick up little things. Still didn't really know what I was doing, but just was kind of better than the average person at it. So was making money and thinking I was in college. I was making money playing poker, and I was in the fraternity. I was, living the life, and yeah, didn't really have much of a plan. And then graduated, and I started working at Bank of America. I was doing foreclosure claims. My buddy moved down. My buddy who had gone to Montana moved down, and I got him a job at Bank of America with me. We were working like 30-hour weeks and then playing like 60-hour poker weeks. Between online and live, sharing money, and just like it was crazy. It was just like a whirlwind few years of just like playing poker, doing school, doing work, and then May 2012, finally it was like all done with everything in Arizona. Didn't really have any reason to stay, and was planning on just driving back to Seattle and like figuring it out, getting a job, and decided like, you know what, I'm going to go to Las Vegas first. I'm going to see, I'm going to play the World Series of Poker. I'm going to give it a shot. I didn't have that much money, but I was like, fuck it. Like, let's see what happens. I wrote an email, I think, to the National API organization. I said, I need like the president's information at UNLV. I emailed him. I said, you know, my name is Darren Rabinowitz. I used to be president of API at ASU. I need a place to live. He was like, yeah, we need someone to live in our house over the summer. Like, we don't have any brothers living here. Like, it's yours. I think they charged me like $300 a month or something. I was barely there. There were a few guys like you, Jaden, Elon, Durbin.
Yeah, there's only a few of us there.
Only a few guys. Lee.
Dude, there's some throwback names in there. I was trying to remember before we had this conversation of what year you actually did move into the Pie House.
2012. Yeah.
2012. So that's when Greek life was still good at UNLV. Yeah, that's when Greek life was still good at UNLV before everything kind of fell off of a cliff.
So my life was pretty much that summer, play poker at the casino for about 12 hours a day and come home and party for like 6 hours a night and sleep a few hours and do it again the next day. And by the end of the summer, I'd done well. And I was like, I'm going to ride this out instead of going home and getting a job. Let's just see what happens. And we are here 8-9 years later.
It's like the ultimate Vegas story. You hear that so often of people just saying, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna make just a casual visit down to Vegas and see what happens, and you end up staying and finding some success. And so when you like you said, you moved into the Pie House, you're in this new world, but it was still somewhat similar. What was it like navigating the on the scene, poker scene in Vegas in 2012? Was it anything that you expected, or was it just something completely blasphemous and you kind of just had to figure it out?
I'd come to Vegas a few times. Like, I came when I was underage. I came once when I didn't actually even have a fake ID, and the poker rooms don't card you like the rest of the casino does. Like, sometimes if you look young, they'll card you when you sit down or at the cage when you cash out. But my friends had fake IDs, so they would buy chips and give them to me. I'd buy in, give them the chips, they'd cash out. Like, Vegas wasn't that like unknown to us, so I had like a plan. Like, I was gonna play some small cash games. I was gonna play some small tournaments. I knew kind of what it had to offer. Looking back now, Vegas poker scene's, it's interesting. It's a lot smaller than you would expect. There's a lot of professionals, but at like different levels, and they don't all. It's just a weird ecosystem where the games are kind of small or they're really big, and there's nothing kind of in the middle. So you're either like stuck, but like you can go to small casinos like Tropicana or Mirage or whatever, and you can play like a $60 tournament or $100 tournament, or you can go to like the Aria sometimes or like Bellagio and play like a $25,000 tournament. But there's nothing in like the middle sometimes, like you either have to be a high roller or like a low guy. So it's kind of, you have to, so for the first few years I was traveling a lot. I was playing a lot of tournaments. I went to like I kind of went all over because the games here just weren't great.
That's probably because it's dominated by a lot of tourism too. So the skill levels are very off, and that it's just not, you're not surrounded by the people that you want to be with and the people that you want to grow from, the people that you want to learn from. It's kind of just like a go out there and maybe try to rake on people's money or just pick up on small cues.
Yeah, and like the locals in Vegas are different than in other places. Also, like in Arizona, when I played at the casino, there wasn't much to do there, and like people there, it's not like gambling was like a huge thing. Like everyone was funneled into one casino, so like the games are always going to be good. Like everyone, if you wanted to play poker, had to go to Casino Arizona, had to go where I was, and like the games are good. In Vegas, they have options. Mm-hmm. They can go play like at the Aria or at the Mirage or at the Venetian or at the Wynn or wherever they want to play. And so it makes it like more spread out. Instead of 200, 400 bad players in one place, there's 50 players at all the different venues. So getting in a game, instead of getting in a poker game that has 7 bad players and 2 good players, you're now in a poker game that has 4 bad players and 5 good, whatever it is. Like it just gets that harder to make money.
Yeah, so it's like it's a very diluted ecosystem just because there's so much options. It's almost like it's almost like the Netflix of poker. There's just way too much to choose from unless there's a specific attraction.
Right, and so some of the casinos differentiate. I guess they hold their own tournament series, or they establish themselves as the place to play certain games or whatever it is, and they're able to establish some sort of market dominance in that. But poker is not a big moneymaker for the casinos, and it takes up a lot of space. So, when you play poker, you don't play against the house. Like the house just takes their cut of every hand, but you're not like they're not ever going to make. No one can go off in a poker room for $1 million to the house. Like if you lose $1 million, another player is leaving with that money. Right. And they're not always going to lose it at baccarat or at blackjack. It's not like gambling in the sense that the house is getting like a disproportionate amount of every pot. They're getting the exact amount they're due every hand.
Right. So it's to the casinos, it's more of an amenity for their top guests, because that's probably what goes hand in hand is the VIPs. They have their hosts and their top poker players because they're going in and raking during these top cash tournaments.
Yep, and like poker rooms weren't a big thing in casinos until the early 2000s, because that's when the poker boom happened and everyone was coming to Vegas. We want to play poker. We want to play poker. Where the poker rooms, places made these massive rooms, and now like you worked at Omnia, like you know that club used to be the poker room.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, they had to blow part of it out.
Caesars was massive, and now it's like a tiny little enclave in the center of the casino. Like the poker room at Caesars used to be sick. Like that's where we used to go play when I was first underage and came. It was in Caesars. Like it was a huge room. It was like they had like the pictures on the wall. It was like a cool experience.
So where are the go-to poker rooms now in Las Vegas as far as a professional player?
For tournaments, I would say the places to play are Venetian and Wynn. And then during the summer, the World Series of Poker happens at the Rio. So you play at the Rio. And then every December, there's a big high stakes series at Bellagio.
Interesting. So it is a little bit more for the upscale or upper echelon hotels, because they offer, that's like their amenities is the upper class.
Yep. Yep. And the rest of the casinos can't really offer that. For cash games, you can kind of go anywhere. Like some people, there's Red Rock. There's even like South Point has a poker room. Like if you want to just go play poker.
So the locals will probably hit more of the community hotels.
I mean, I would think so. Like if I live in Summerlin and I want to go play poker, I can just zip over to Red Rock and like it's the same game that I'm going to get if I'm going to, like a local going to play at the Wynn. There's probably less professionals in Red Rock.
Interesting. Okay. And as far as the big World Series of Poker, the one that everyone talks about now that it's always nationally televised. Is that a must for all of the poker players to play in? Is it something that is almost required as a status?
Not a status as much as like if you're a tournament player, even if you're a cash game player, like the games in Las Vegas during the summer are just enormous. Like this is when every amateur comes. This is when everyone like takes their shot at like fulfilling their dream and like becoming like the next like put up $1,000 and win $1 million guy and like quitting their job and moving to Vegas. Like this is like the dream. So all the amateurs come. So as a result, all the pros have to come. So it just juices up every prize pool. Like it's not like a rite of passage. It's just like you have to do it. Like as a professional, you have to go where the money is. So if the money's at the World Series, like you just are there.
Yeah, that's how I kind of see it. It's like it's almost like a Instagrammable moment for a poker player. It's like, oh, or even for an amateur, because it's like, oh, I'm here.
For an amateur, for sure, it's like the bucket list. Like, tell your friends I was here. For a professional, like people joke and like call it like summer camp or like, it's just, because it's when all your friends like, poker's an international game. So I have friends from Australia, from Germany, from the UK, whatever. But during the summer, they're all in Las Vegas. Like we all are going out to dinner. We're all going to like, Top Golf. We're all going out having fun. And then during the day, everyone's at the Rio. And everyone's playing poker together and like, having fun and meeting up on break and shooting the shit and, smoking joints and laughing and making fun of each other. It's kind of like the time where like, I don't see my girlfriend for 2 months because I'm just at the casino or like out with friends almost like.
So would you say it sounds like it's more of like a friendly atmosphere than you would think of animosity between people because it's such a high prize pool. I think it's in the like tens of millions now for first place.
Yeah, for sure. It's super friendly, super like casual, like when you're at the table, you want to beat everybody, but these are like, it's a pretty small community of professionals and even like recreational professionals. Like, there's some retired, like 50, 60, 70-year-old guys that play all the tournaments. Like they're not professionals, but they're, competent and they're like there all the time. And they're what build the prize pools. Like, so if you see the same guys all the time, like you just end up like, sitting at the table for 10 hours a day next to somebody and you don't have good cards some days. You just end up talking to the guys next to you and learning about them and over time become friendly.
And when you're around these people for so long, how do you get an upper edge on them? Is it strategy through the cards or is it small cues that people give off like in regards to like a poker face?
Yeah, it's a lot less of that and more of the first part, more of just the strategy of the cards and more of just the like, just someone's overall strategy and game plan and kind of how they're playing and the cards they're getting that day. But it is funny, like the way people go after their friends a little bit or like, take joy in like beating their friends or like there's something called slow rolling, which is like if you have a really good hand and someone like goes all in, instead of calling right away, you just like take your time and sit there and like make them think you're going to fold maybe. Oh man, this is like a tough decision. You really have it. And then like after a minute or two, you call and like, you knock them out. And they're kind of just like, fuck you, man. Like,
yeah, like you said, it sounds a lot like summer camp. It's just there's little tricks where you could get inside of people's heads. And even if it doesn't have the result that you want, it's still for the good laughs at the end of the day.
For sure. And, like poker now is all online because of COVID. So like the things like looking at someone and being able to like get a read kind of go away. You know, all the games now are online. The last 4 months have just been like, it's been crazy. Like,
yeah, how can you touch a little bit more on how the online poker world has responded to COVID?
Yeah, the online poker world started out by like setting these massive tournaments right away, like March and April. Every site, there's probably like, depending how you like consider major, like 4 to 8 major sites. Like every one of them instantly released like a high stakes tournament series, where instead of like their normal daily schedule, they inflated every prize pool. They added a bunch of tournaments at higher stakes. They at every stake, but they just added a ton. They flooded the market and they added like big guarantees. So for like March and April, everyone was loving it. A lot of people were like winning a lot, but also if a lot of people win a lot of people are losing a lot. So by like May, a lot of the games started to dry up because people had like lost a lot of money and needed time to kind of chill. But the sites are being short-sighted, so they're still trying to like pump it up. For them, like, why wait? Everyone's home. Like, do they really need to protect the ecosystem? So they're still pumping up these big tournaments. So like the best players are winning more and more, and like the worst players are quitting, and the middle guys are getting hammered. Like, so, it's a pyramid system where the money flows up. So as the games have started to die, sites are finally starting to scale it back a little bit. That being said, the World Series of Poker is online, and it's going on right now. It's every day of July. There's a World Series of Poker tournament at 3:00 online. So, like, for all they're doing to scale it back, there's still like big tournaments every day, and
wow,
people are winning and losing hundreds of thousands of dollars every day.
I didn't even know that the WSOP was transitioning online. I thought they just had like canceled it flat out and was like, better luck next year.
Yeah, they decided to do it in a 2-part series. So the way online poker in the US works is there's only a few states that are regulated to actually play. Nevada, New Jersey, like Pennsylvania, Delaware, but only Nevada and New Jersey residents share liquidity to play on the World Series license website. So the World Series of Poker, which is normally open to everyone, for this month is only open to players who are in Nevada and New Jersey. So there's been a lot of people from surrounding states driving in and getting Airbnbs, renting places for the month. Then for August, they have an international series that they've licensed their name out to a different website. So it's going to be the World Series of Poker International, and that's going to be like all of August. And those are going to be like bigger tournaments because they're open to more people. Like the biggest tournament in July, I think, is like $1,000, or maybe there's like one tournament that's more. And the biggest tournaments in August are going to be like $100,000
to buy in.
There's some tournaments that are $100,000 to buy in. There's some tournaments that are $5,000, $10,000, $25,000 just to buy in.
That's crazy. Why? I've always been curious about the stipulations surrounding and the regulations surrounding online poker. I know Nevada, just because Nevada and New Jersey because there's Atlantic City with the gambling, but why aren't any of the other states allowed to gamble or get into poker? Do you know?
A lot of it has to do with not licensing, just legislation. People are just scared. There's lobbying against it. A lot of Native American tribes have casino rights in their states, and by giving up online poker, or by like allowing online poker, you can cut into that. So there's exclusivity laws due to some Native American stipulations. Then there's just like some of the websites themselves have broken laws, so they are prohibited from being in the US. So like the sites that are allowed in the US right now have either had to pay damages, or they're new sites that have come up and that have sprouted up. Like the WSOP website wasn't around 10 years ago. It's like a relatively new, and it probably started like 6 years ago. Yeah, there's just so much lobbying, and like California, there's so much money from, like, why would Morongo Casino want to lose their money to these people staying home playing poker against,
It makes sense. It's like the big players, they want to stay up at the top, and there's a little bit of a kind of like a mafia kind of esque vibe going on there, because it'll definitely deter people away from Vegas, even though that sports betting is now legal across the United States. It made me curious if poker would end up inevitably going down the same path or not.
Yeah, it's starting to get legalized in more and more states. I think it might have just gotten legalized in Michigan, but then they still have to be able to legislate the interstate licenses to be able to share liquidity, because there's like legal stuff with crossing state lines and how it relates to like money laundering, and I don't really understand all of it. To me, it seems crazy. Like, I mean, it's what I do, so I guess it seems crazy, but like, it's just nuts that it's 2020 and it's not legal for people to sit at home and play poker or make a sports bet if they want. Like, the Bitcoin isn't a massive. It's just crazy that people aren't able to see like that freedom, like financial freedom, and like, just how you want to spend your discretionary income should be up to you. And like, if you want to play poker against people in the US, like, who cares? Like, who are you hurting?
That's what I'm saying. It's literally like, it reminds me of just like gerrymandering for voting, but it becomes gerrymandering for protecting finances in these different states with all these weird loopholes and hoops and ladders that you have to jump through for it.
I mean, every state has legalized lotteries, which are, literally designed to profit off of poor people, like targeting low-income people, and they're predatory, and they're inherently losing money. Like, it's a losing proposition to win, to play the lottery, much less the negative things that can happen if you actually win the lottery. But like, every state just has sponsored lotteries, but like, and gambling is in like other forms, but poker, which is like undebatably a game of skill, not being legal is just hilarious on so many levels.
It is. So for the people that are playing online poker, is there a limit to how many games you're allowed to play as far as the windows and screens open?
I haven't hit that limit. I probably haven't gone higher than like 14 or 15 tables during quarantine.
At a time?
At a time. The majority of the time, I would say I'm playing between 6 and 12.
Man, poker's already a strategical game. How do you manage to play so many games at one time?
So when you like think about a poker hand, and how many bad hands you get dealt if you play in a poker game. So like, if you're playing 8 tables, let's say, you're getting dealt a bad hand at like 4 of them right off the bat, like unplayable hands, right? Fold. So you're really only playing like the 4 now. So like, out of those 4, you might have like one hand where you raise and everyone folds. One hand where you raise, like one guy calls. One hand that it gets raised in front of you and then you end up folding. Like, so you're not really like playing 8 tables at a time. They're all there, but your decision-making processes aren't being used on everyone at every time. Like, you're able to act in advance in spots, so you can fold and not look at it. And as tables disappear, you can choose to replace them or not. So if I'm doing really well in a tournament, I might want to focus on that, and I might say, I'm not going to buy into any more tournaments. For right now, I'm just going to focus until this one's done. And like, then I might only have 3 tables for the rest of the day, and I might just lose the other 2, and I'll be sitting there with, So but it's not something you start out doing. You build up to it. You start with playing 1 at a time, and then that starts to feel slow. You play 2, and that starts to feel slow. And it's like a practice thing, and you might not be playing 100% your best game on every one, but if you're playing like 85% your best game, and like it's good enough to like do well enough, and then you lose a couple of the tournaments, and now you're able to play like 92%, and now you lose a couple more, and you're finally up to like 100. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so it sounds like some of the things that you lose from playing in-person games, like the cues that people give off and human psychology, and you kind of swap that out for just playing straight statistics at that point.
Sheer volume.
Yeah, it's straight statistics, volume, and it seems like you could probably make a lot more money that way.
You can, if being also lose all like these tournaments are $100 sometimes, like tournaments have that line $100, $200. You can re-enter 3 hours. So a $200 tournament can end up being a $1,000 tournament. It's done. Mm-hmm. And you can have a day like where you're in for $10, $12, $15,000, and you have to like have some cashes that day, otherwise it's going to be a pretty bad day. Now,
is there?
Said, you can also have days you play 1 tournament.
Is there an actual legal limit onto how many games you could play at one time?
No, I think because you can play different sites simultaneously. Some sites might have limits on how many you can play on theirs. Let's say that I'm playing on WSFP.com. They say I can only play 6 tables at a time. Then I'll just open up whatever, X other website, and play 6 more tables there. And if they say I can't play more, I'll just open, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
There's options. Just because you're in Las Vegas and only a few sites are like regulated and legal here, doesn't mean there aren't online places to play poker still, the same way you get some sports betting from states.
So do you think as COVID kind of just drags along, and now we're going to see casinos are talking about closing down again, do you think they'll ever just kind of give in with the inevitable of in-person poker just being impossible and impractical at the moment, and just creating some sort of new poker services?
Yeah, I'm not sure. They're trying to do different things. Like I know some of the casinos in Florida have opened for poker. In Texas, they're trying to do 5 people at a table, and hand sanitizer every hand. Change, whatever. They have all these guidelines that sound good in theory, but like you still have people coming in. I don't see how it's going to be sustainable yet.
Yeah, I think there might be a long drought period in between this, and it's going to be tough at times. And so I know let me phrase this. As a lot of the degenerate gamblers, not necessarily just poker players, have kind of transitioned into different activities as far as like, trading stocks and crypto on Robinhood. Do you see a lot of the poker community doing the same?
Some, yes, but people are lazy. And like poker players don't want to have to like learn new trades. They can just like log in and play poker, and if they're losing, they can like. People just find ways to stay in games even if they're losing money. Like I don't know how some people are still playing poker for how bad they are and how much they lose, but I mean, not to fire like bang bangs out or anything, but like some people are just bad and lose a lot of money, and like they're not winning and they play everything and they lose. So people are able to stay in games however it is. Like the poker world's a crazy place, the gambling world's a crazy place. People borrow a lot of money. People don't pay their debts. People play on credit. Places. It's just like until you're really in it, it doesn't seem normalized. And when you're in it, it just doesn't seem like any other way makes sense.
That makes sense. Hold on. Yeah, just as there's like a lot of bad traders, there's probably even more bad poker players out there.
Yes. I mean, just think about how many people play poker in every community in every town. Like everyone's a poker player. Like on something like you play poker.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, like I've gone to the pie house and like all you guys are playing poker and like I've played poker against some of you and like you guys are just terrible. Like, but it's fine. Like you wouldn't expect you to be good. Like I'd be terrible if I came. Like I would be objectively terrible at like going into someone else's job and like trying to do it. Like it's just levels. You're probably fine for that game and against the players you're playing against. You might even be like killing it. But objectively, you guys are just bad poker players. And if you played in games with professionals, you would lose money. Which is fine, like I said. But yes, there are a lot of bad poker players, like my mom and my stepdad, and again, fine, but they're just not very good.
So how did you personally get much better at poker? I know in the beginning you said you talked about doing more travel tournaments and kind of experiencing that realm first. Is there a specific kind of strategy as far as getting better?
Just so much of it was trial and error. Like playing online, you play so many hands. When you lose, like you just have to, you see what works, what other players are doing, who are winning, and a lot of it's just, you know, osmosis. You sit at the poker table and you watch how the good play. Like you can instantly tell if someone is a good or bad player almost. Like if you know what to look for, the way someone shuffles their chips, the way someone holds their chips, how they bet, how they look at their cards, how they. There's like 15 things you could do in the first hand sitting down that I could like make a reasonable determination on if you're any good or any bad.
And most of that's from mannerisms.
Yeah, like live poker things, like just someone's comfort level playing at the casino. Like if they don't look like they've been there very often, they're probably not very good. Or they're like some online secret crusher. But there's just not many of those in 2020.
So would it be more practical then to play cash games or tournaments as when you first start out?
Probably a mix of both. You probably just want to play as many different hands and see as many different scenarios. Like cash games, you'll probably make money and you can fund some small stakes tournaments and you can just like, you'll see quickly like this guy's good. He's winning every pot he plays and like this is what he does. And okay, I should pay attention and like do some of the things he does. And then like you'll try something and you'll butcher it completely and you'll lose and you'll be like, you'll go home and you'll have lost $200. You'll sit there like, shit, I really didn't like losing $200. Like, how do I play this hand differently next time so I don't lose $200? So I maybe like lose $50 because then I just won $150 and that's all, you know. Or like, however it is, like and you're gonna end up like having that. That's the cruel thing about poker is that you can see everything and like you end up seeing, you know, the outcome of the hand. So you have to train yourself not to care about the results and just like think about what could I have done? Like maybe you're just supposed to lose all your money that hand, and that's fine. And maybe you got in with the best hand and you just like got unlucky, and maybe you bluffed and it was a good bluff. But just like you're gonna be constantly when you first start playing, second guessing yourself and thinking about different things you could have done. And yeah.
It's a lot. Something too that I've learned, which I know this probably translates over from trading, you know, Forex and cryptocurrencies. A lot of it is just money management and sticking with the statistical side rather than getting greedy. And that's how a lot of people do when you go against the odds, because you have this sort of inclination that God is on your side and you're going to win this $300 hand. And so you go all in and end up just busting and losing everything.
Right. Yep. And yeah, exactly. You can't be a field player or you can't think that your gut is like somehow smarter than, you know, the strategy dictates. You can't go into a hand and say, I'm going to win this hand right here. Like you have to look at your cards like someone else. You have to like read what the other person's doing. If someone else is telling you they have a good hand and you're sitting there with shitty cards, you're just like, I'm going to win. Like, it's pretty self-defeating.
Right. Yeah. It's just like it's like revenge trading, where you lose everything and now you're like,
Yep.
fuck, I have to make this back. And it's like the gambler's mindset. And so you
Yep.
try to go double all in just to make all that back.
Yeah, you tilt and you martingale and you do all these dumb things and you put yourself in bad positions. And tilt in poker is super real, and bankroll management is super important. Like, being in control of your money and knowing, it is gambling. Like it's smart gambling and it's strategic gambling, but it is gambling, and you can lose all your money. Like, if you put it all on the table in one hand, you could definitely lose that hand, even if the player is the worst player in the world.
Yeah. So let's say you keep practicing, you get better, and now you're a professional poker player. What is the lifestyle of a professional poker player outside of poker itself? How would you describe it?
There's life outside of poker. No, I'm just kidding. It depends on how you allocate your time, kind of like anything. I think it's just, when you really break it down in that way, it's just like another job. It's I'm sure whenever someone comes home from as a trader, they're thinking about their trades all day, or they're thinking about, what if you come home as a golfer, you're thinking about shots you left on the course or whatever, but you still have your life at home and your friends. And a lot of my friends are poker players, which is nice because they have a lot of free time too. And when my girlfriend goes to work, we can go get lunch or we can go golf or whatever it is, but still have to be able to manage your time. And you're self-employed. You have to put yourself out there to play poker, and not many jobs where you go to work and you can lose money. So you have to, when you play, be focused and play well, and hopefully have good results.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's almost like what everyone wants to do. It's like you're almost like an entrepreneur where you have to manage yourself and you have to be self-sufficient. But at the end of the day, you can't lose everything in one day if you get too greedy.
Mm-hmm. And you have to trust the process, and just like a regular job, the only difference is you might have big windfalls, but you're still have an outline for how your year is going to go. I've done this for 8 or 9 years, and I have expectations every year going, on how the year's going to go, and whatever actually happens is out of my control. But over time, I've have estimations still for how it should go. It could be a sick year that I could win 10 huge tournaments in a row. There's nothing saying I can't.
So you're saying that you actually have to plan the year ahead?
Well, no, but you have to be able to budget your life, and just, if you buy a house or if you, start to have kids or whatever it is, you have to be this is how much money I think I'm going to make over the next few years. And this is how much money we'll have as a family, or whatever. You have to be able to have some kind of thought process when it comes to that.
Proper budgeting. You probably have to put a decent side amount away for a bunch of these tournaments, right? Like the World Series of Poker is $10,000 to enter, correct?
Yeah, that's just the main event, and then there's a ton of other tournaments throughout the festival of the World Series. It can cost a lot of money. A lot of people have investors and sell off pieces and shares to people because if you played every tournament of the World Series, you get a couple $100,000.
Really? So you can sell a piece of your earnings to somebody who puts in the pot for you?
Well, if you wanted to invest in me, let's say I'm going to play the $10,000 tournament and you wanted to invest in me, I could sell you a percentage. So let's say you wanted 10% of me. Well, 10% of 10,000 would be $1,000. But I'm a pretty good player, so I'm going to charge a premium on that. So people set markups. So then there's the discussion of how good you are in a field, how much money you can win, what you expect. So I could, let's say, for that $1,000 tournament, I sell it to you for $1,500. So I put $1,000 for the tournament and $500 in my pocket. So I could sell, if I wanted to, if I thought I was that good, I could sell 50% of the tournament. and make $5,000 profit right away and have 50% of myself. Now, if I think I'm that good of a player, I probably just want to keep more of a percent of myself in play. But if something costs $200,000 over a few months, doesn't matter how rich you are, like most people can't afford that.
Mm-hmm.
So I might have some investors take 10% of the entire summer. And like that way they have a chance to win the big ones, but I also like get some protection.
That sounds like, logically speaking, sounds like a good idea. It does seem like as human emotions could kind of tie into that, where if someone invests in you and you kind of have a guarantee of, $5,000 that you're going to walk away whether you win or lose, you don't think that it would subject the player to not being to the top of his game because he has a guarantee?
So I still have, let's say it depends how much someone sells. So there is the notion that you want the player to have some skin in the game himself. Like if I'm a good player, I don't want to sell all of my action anyway. I would sell 20% and put up, if you, let's say you put up 1,500 for 20%, there's 3,000 in there. I'm still putting up $7,000. So just because I've pocketed $500 from you doesn't mean I'm not super incentivized to do well. I'm putting up $7,000 or whatever it is. Or even if I have put up no money and I have 50% and first place is $1 million, like why would I not want to play well when I can win $500,000 for free?
Ah, yes, that doesn't make sense.
Like
actually,
I'm still super incentivized to play my best because playing bad doesn't benefit me at all. Like, yeah, and also like you're not going to invest in me again if I play bad. Like if I like torch it and it gets reported on ESPN or something, like you're like, wow, what the fuck? I thought my buddy was good. He sucks. Like I'm never going to do that again. But like if I win us a bunch of money and I start wanting to play bigger tournaments and travel around the world and like, do whatever, and now you're a loyal investor potentially for life. And like,
that makes actually a lot more sense now that you explained that out. Because I know with human psychology and guarantees, and once you play investors in there, sometimes it could get a little touchy.
It can, and some people play worse when they have investors, and some people play better. Like some people would feel like I have a friend who is very, very aggressive to the point where like he does some things that are objectively like not good. And when he crushes, like he wins a lot of money playing poker. And when he has investors, he sometimes feels like he can't play the game he wants to play. Because like if he plays something as crazy as he wants and it doesn't work out, like he's almost embarrassed to tell his investors that he lost or whatever. But at the same time, like everyone knows how he plays. So when you buy his action, you should kind of know what you're getting into. But like you said, human psychology plays into it.
Yeah,
So
some people are not.
And other people might play better when they have investors. Like, oh, I really want to make Jake money. Like, he gave me his trust. Like, oh, I could take this bluff, but I don't think it's going to work that often. Like, if it was all my money, I might go for it and just like say fuck it. But like, I'm going to hold off and
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is interesting. So for these investors, is there a rating system where the kind of the attributes in the player that you are is listed, or is this more of a referral system?
I would say that once you get into kind of the mid-tier to top-tier professionals, it's a pretty closed circle. So like there are people who are poker investors. There are groups that are poker staking conglomerates. And people kind of know who to seek out and where to look if they need to find people to buy their money. Or like this, you have your circle of friends. If I have 10 friends who are professional poker players and I'm a professional poker player, I'm like, hey guys, this is really a tournament. Like they'll decide whether or not they think I'm good. And they'll like, poker players are always looking to invest in other poker players.
Because, that is fucking awesome, I have to say. That is dope.
Yeah, because we think of it as like, oh, he's a good player. He's playing the tournament. It's an investment. Like, I expect him to win this amount of money this percent of the time. If he loses, he loses. It's just like super high risk, volatile investing with really rapid returns.
I like that. The more volatile, the better.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun. Like, it's really fun to have like 10% of a friend in a tournament, and like 10 hours later, he texts you, is like, won it for whatever it is, 41,000, owe you 4,100. And you're like, oh, sick.
I can see
It was
that.
nice. I was just playing video games all day.
I can see that's why there's a huge sense of camaraderie within the poker, especially because you want to see each other win, and you guys are investing in each other. So it's like a family. I can see why that becomes more close knit.
And then there's like the opposite side that, like, you know, human nature is human nature. You play with people enough, you start to dislike some people and root against them and band together with your buddies to, you know, make fun of them in the group chat. There's some trolling. It's like the gaming community. You're like, whatever. There's definitely like poker Twitter where there's memes and trolls and like, you know, people getting into it and going at it, and it's definitely part of it. Like, the anti-sweat is just as real as the sweat sometimes. Like, if I have 5% of one guy and none of another, like, I want my guy to win, but I also want that other guy to not win just as bad.
That's funny. Yeah. Because I know in tournaments too, especially the World Series of Poker, I think it's like the top 100 or 150 or maybe even more get paid out. So it's not necessarily just a zero-sum game where it's like the winner take all. There's
it's usually the top like 10 or 15% of the tournament field. So if there's like the main event, $10,000 buy-in has like 6,000 people, they pay out like 700 or 800 players usually.
Yeah, so you think that would loosen the tensions a little bit?
It does to some degree, yeah, it does. But you still just, like, you know, there's some people who you just like have to play with every day, and like you just don't like for whatever reason. Maybe like every time I sit at the table with a certain person, like they just don't stop talking and like just annoy me. Or maybe they're like a Niners fan.
Yeah, Darren's a giant Seahawks fan, for those who don't know. Never forget when we watched that Super Bowl at the Pie House. You're just head in the corner when Russell Wilson threw that pick. Had to throw that in there.
Man.
But then on the reverse side, when we were at the Pie House and we watched the Seahawks whoop the Broncos' ass, and that was a terrible time for me because I'm a huge Broncos fan. So yeah, the tables were turned. But going back into tournament winnings, something when I watched the World Series of Poker a lot when I was younger, not necessarily as much anymore. The people who would win, they would always say that they're not in it for the money. They're in it for the bracelet. Is the accolade just as important in the poker world as the money?
I think that they did a very good job marketing that. And they made it so that like a bracelet became some order of validation to people outside of the poker world. So like inherently it gave it some inflated sense of importance in the poker world. So people would be like, you know, I went professional and my parents thought I was an idiot, and my friends are like, what are you doing? And then I want a bracelet, and I showed them, like, they all were like, ooh, you can win the World Series of Poker. But like, when you think about it, it's just like a random poker tournament. Like, it's the same importance as winning a tournament at the Venetian or in, you know, Texas or wherever. Like, who cares? There's no extra like importance put on it. And I think that recently they did a good job of marketing. Like I said, like the brand had a lot of power, and like everyone did want to win. And in the mid 2000s or like and early 2010s, there was a lot of hype about like bracelets, like winning, go to the World Series, win bracelets. But they've diluted their brand a lot the last few years. They've had bad public relations. They've had bad customer service and interactions. They've put out bad products. So I think the value and the importance has gone down a lot. And like things like having the World Series of Poker online now and having like 70 bracelet events held over the internet to like people playing at home in Nevada and New Jersey doesn't like sit right with a lot of people. And yeah, so it's definitely had a big allure, and I would like to win. It'd be I would prefer to win than to not win, I'll put it that way. But like I've won trophies, and like they're just whatever. Like, I guess to me, I'm not a big trophy person. So
yeah, it's more just the experience and obviously the money at the end of the day, just because you have to partition all the money, all of your winnings out for future events. So you have to think ahead.
exactly. I mean, and, it's fun, especially like the World Series of Poker is fun to win because all of your friends are there and like they're all at the same, like, let's say I win an event at the Rio and everyone else is there already playing. They can all kind of like stop by and like, it's just like the camaraderie. It's fun. It's like everyone hypes you up. You go out that night and celebrate, but the next day it's just like right back to it.
So outside of the people who play poker, the players, what is the media like that surrounds poker now that it's kind of on this world grand stage? Is it similar to like how ESPN is to sports? Is there like
So
media that
there
covers
are
it?
poker outlets. There's a couple. There's Pocket Fives, and there is Poker News. But I believe Poker News is owned by Poker Stars, which is like the biggest poker website. So like, or biggest online poker site. So there's obviously like some bias in there. I think that the poker media tries very hard to do a good job, but a lot of the people are not natural journalists. And a lot of the people are, because you interact so much with people, there's so many like friendships that it's hard to like cover it objectively. People end up just like getting puff pieces written, and like when scandals happen, like it becomes like poker Twitter blows up, but like it's hard to report. It's also different than like ESPN because the players aren't paid. So like I have no incentive to talk to a reporter. Like if I'm playing a tournament and an ESPN reporter wants to talk to me, like fuck you, man. Like I want to go smoke a joint and like get my head in the right space and chill, and like I don't want to spend my 15-minute break I get every 2 hours. I don't want to spend 10 of it talking to an ESPN reporter for no money. Or like, no, not to be like whatever, but it's kind of part of the gig when you're a pro golfer or baseball player or whatever, that you have media responsibility and you have sponsors. I don't have like any fucking sponsors. Like if Doritos wants to pay me $15 grand a year to talk to some reporters, I'll talk to whoever they want. But like I value my time more than I value like making some reporter's day. And if like if I thought a journalist was doing like a really good job covering like going out of his way to try and cover like poker in depth and from the right perspective, like I'd contact him and say like, hey, if you need any help, like reach out to me.
Interesting. So I didn't even think of it from that outlet, just because you're not directly paid or you're not on a salary as per se as like NFL or NBA. You guys are almost like independent contractors where you have to defend on yourself. So it's more about valuing your own time, getting in the headspace, because that's really what's important. Are there sponsors that come out and sponsor poker players, like you're saying, like Doritos or any companies like that?
They sponsor the tours. So like the World Series of Poker will have a sponsorship with they've had like Jack Link's beef jerky, or they've had like Degree deodorant, they have the Degree all in moment and the whatever. But poker players have not gotten sponsored outside of like really top few 3-5 guys, and like some guys can get like a t-shirt deal from like some off-brand small company, but no one has like Nike hitting them up or like I think when I was like 25, probably in like 2014, I hit up Raising Cane's. I got in touch with their like director of marketing and was like, if you wanted to sponsor me, yada yada, I would do it for X, Y, and Z. And he was like, no, we're good. But like there's a few agents, but like poker players aren't really going out marketing themselves and like seeking out those, and companies don't even consider it. Like who knows, like maybe if I went around and like emailed them again or emailed like other places, like they would do it. Like it's not very much money to them if I play whatever. I play a lot of fucking poker tournaments, and if I start to get exposure and like win a bunch and they're giving me like $5,000 in free Domino's pizza every year to wear a Domino's shirt,
Fuck
Like,
yeah.
it's pretty good for, they can get pretty good returns if I end up on TV or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But people aren't going out marketing themselves and don't have agents and they don't have incentives and they're not on TV all the time.
That's interesting. Yeah, I honestly didn't know that. I just assumed that since it was on ESPN, it kind of got the same publicity and the intensity of the media surrounding it, always wanting to talk to the players or trying to catch them in some sort of interview where they can use their words out of context and create a scandal.
Yeah, I mean, so much of interviews now are done like through text and through email that like it's kind of hard to do like gotchas anymore.
It is. Yeah, it is a little bit tougher now because you could just go out on Twitter and tweet it, do a tweet storm, talk about it.
Exactly. Like, yeah.
So also too, something we didn't touch, which I wanted to touch on in the beginning, you talked about traveling and doing poker tours outside of the US. What is the poker scene like outside of the US?
It's definitely tougher.
It's tougher?
Well, it depends where you go. Let me rephrase that. Europe. So I've gone to Europe. I've played in Prague, London, France. Might be it. They are generally better players. Like when they come to the US, same thing. The Germans, the Austrians, Russians, they're good. They have access to all the different online sites. It's legal in their countries. They grow up playing. There's not you don't have to jump through the same hoops as you have to jump through as a U.S. resident playing poker. Even Canadians, they have access to a lot of different things. Now, if you go down to some countries where poker's a little newer, New Zealand, Australia, some South American places, games are incredible. Like people are just learning, the strategy lags behind. And so it depends on where you are. But the games in Europe were definitely much tougher on average than in the U.S. More aggressive, bigger buy-ins. The euro is bigger than the dollar, so even if you're playing a $500 tournament versus a €500 tournament, you're playing like, depending on what year it was, you're playing like an $800 tournament. So like you don't even realize it. You're like, oh, they'll play this series where it has $500 and $1,000, but you get there in the euros, and you lose twice as much as you brought, or as in your head, like.
Mm-hmm. Huh. So since it is tougher, do they give any extra incentives for Americans to come out there, or just the same stakes?
Yeah. Just if you think the tours just put out they provide the venue, they provide the tournament. Sometimes they back the tournament with a guarantee. They'll guarantee that they'll provide a minimum payout prize pool based on how many players they expect to attract. But that's about it. Like other than that, most 99% of poker tournaments are open entry. If you have the money to buy in and you're there, go for it.
So it's just a little bit more of like a change of scenery than anything else.
Or just like maybe in August there are no good tournaments in the U.S. and I have been sitting around for the last 2 months playing online, and the only tournaments are in Prague, and there's good tournaments for 3 weeks. Like fuck it, I'll make a vacation and I'll go play poker. Or like, yeah, sometimes it's just a change of scenery. Like I just gotta get out of Vegas. And
yeah, Vegas can definitely suffocate you at times, just with all the commotion surrounding it, and just late nights. And if you get consumed with the lifestyle, which is with just gambling in general, the lifestyle around it is a lot of sex and drugs, and how money flies, it changes people. So it can definitely feel like an overarching dark cloud at times.
Definitely.
So, you've been here since 2012. We're in 2020, so 8 years. Do you see a different pivot down the road as far as your poker career, or are you just going to be doing as much of the same?
Feels like much of the same for now. Tough to kind of see it like anything different, but I feel like it's always tough to see anything different until like you're in it.
Mm-hmm.
Like
I don't know what would like present itself, especially coming out of COVID, where like so many people are unemployed and are going to be like well credentialed looking for jobs. But who knows? There's always something that could come up, and you know.
Yeah, it always seems so obvious retroactively looking at something, but when you're in the middle of it, it's really hard to forecast. And if you do see something, you're usually out on that at ledge alone, just trying to beat everyone to the punch. But
yeah, like I used to think it was more likely I would not do this my whole life. And I still think it's somewhat likely, but as I get older, it becomes less and less, and as I get more entrenched in the poker world. But poker gets tougher every year, and it gets harder to make money, and there's more good players and less bad players. And so unless like if it got fully regulated in the U.S. and open, it'd be another story. But for right now, it's not the easiest forecast to like look down 10 years from now and see what's going to happen and know where I'm going to be. And like, if I'm married, if she's working in MGM still, if she's working somewhere else, if we have to move for that, like who knows, if anything, like, maybe I just don't, I'm not a big planner ahead. Like I plan ahead, like in the logical sense of like, I have some retirement money and I have some stocks and I have like whatever, but like, coronavirus just came out of nowhere and no one could prepare for that. And who knows, my parents are getting older and they're in Seattle and San Francisco and maybe I'll have to move home. And I just don't know anything. So I used to get super offended when like my parents' friends would be like, oh, so you've been playing poker for years. When are you going to start doing something else? Or like, what are you going to do next? And like, well, like, fuck you. Like, I've been doing this for a few years by myself. Like, what do you mean do next? Like, this is what I do.
Yeah, you've been self-sustained for 8 years. It's similar to like when people come out to Vegas, and you're working like in a nightclub or you're serving cards, serving drinks, pretty much anything on the strip. People always come at you with when are you getting a real job? And I'm like, well, if I'm making real job money, does that not count for anything?
Yeah, like this is work. Like this is tough work. Not a lot of people can do it for a reason. I mean, a lot of people could, but there's don't for a reason. It's not the easiest way. It's one of they say it's a hard way to make an easy living.
It's an interesting way to put it. Yeah, it's probably mentally straining. Was there ever a point in your life where you considered stopping poker because of how tough it is?
Not how tough it was. Just there was a few different points where I've lost a bunch of money and considered like taking what I have left and getting out, or playing until I run out of money. And then, fortunate and privileged enough that if I had to start from zero, I always felt like I was young enough and connected enough to people that it never really scared me. Like, if I needed to move home, I could move home and find a job and live off nothing. Like I'm pretty low maintenance and don't need too much. I've learned that it's, I'm pretty simple.
Yeah. You've always been one of my favorite people because you very go with the flow. That's how it was when we always went out. And it's something I always enjoyed.
Yeah, it's you can't get worked up about stuff you have no control over. I think that's something poker teaches you. I mean, there's a lot of lessons it teaches you, but just understanding how little control you have over situations, and that there's always another hand to be played, and all these other cliches that are like cliches for a reason, but are like super telling and just help you deal with people, help you deal with like money issues, help you deal with stressful times, and just like keeping you pretty rational. You got to be the rational optimist at times for success. Yeah.
So I think this would be a good endpoint. I always ask 2 questions, and then we'll give all your information out. But we kind of touched on this already, but I'll ask it anyways. Is the year is 2030? Where do you see yourself at?
The year is 2030. Where do I see myself at?
Mm-hmm. And in regards to poker as well.
Yeah. I was telling my girlfriend the other day, coronavirus is like messing with my head so much. Like it makes me want to like live in a different place every year for the next 20 years, Like I want to go everywhere. I want to go back to Seattle. I want to go to San Francisco. My family's from South Africa. I want to go to Cape Town. I want to like go to Japan. I want to go to Thailand. I'm so like random with it. Like one day I'll just be like, I want to live in Mexico for the next 3 months. Like, I mean, again, fortunate and privileged would have freedom to do those things. And right now, like she's not working. Like, fuck it. You know, I have no idea what 10 years, could be anywhere. Hopefully doing well. I think I'll be doing well. I think I'll be comfortable. Hopefully have some kids.
Hey, I support that movement. And what does Las Vegas mean to you?
Las Vegas definitely feels like home now more than it ever has. It probably took like 4 or 5 years before Las Vegas started to feel like home and not just like a place I was living. And the last few years, it definitely feels like my second home, I would say. Like, definitely a good place to be. And I like, the community is stronger than it was when I came here, I think. Definitely can attribute that to a few things. Some sports teams coming, October 1. But it's a cool place. A lot of good things to do, good people, easy living, cheap, good weather. Vegas kind of sells itself. I mean, it's a good place, good food.
That it is. It only becomes better and better. Home and opportunity. It's always the two best things. So,
sure,
how can everyone get connected with you? And do you have any last words for anybody who may be pursuing poker?
You can get connected with me. I guess Twitter would probably be the best way. My handle is Darren Rabbi. Advice for anyone getting into poker: it's hard. Be prepared to work hard and have a lot of ups and downs, and be honest with yourself. And you have to have a very realistic outlook on the world, and I think that's important.
That is very important. Know when you're pushing too hard, and know when you're not pushing hard enough. Darren,
sure.
Thank you for this conversation. It was always awesome to catch up with you. I know it'd been about a year or two, as we discussed last time, but seems like no time has ever passed.
For sure. It was fun.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.